portrait is a blending of sensory impressions, a kaleidoscope of images and sounds selectively gathered from the world of incidents surrounding us, an interpretive arresting of time and motion. This is a portrait of the city of San Francisco, a portrait 49 miles and 30 minutes long. Portrait, a graphic portrayal of people and places in the San Francisco Bay Area, is produced by KRON TV in the community interest. Today's portrait, 49-mile scenic drive, originates from points of interest throughout the city of San Francisco. From Alcatraz to the zoo, the 49-mile scenic drive covers every facet of metropolitan life. Our drive begins where the city itself began, near the Presidio of San Francisco, traveling along Baker's Beach toward the homes of Seacliff. With its sweeping views of the Pacific Ocean and the Golden Gate, Seacliff is considered the finest residential area in the city of San Francisco. Sedate mansions overlook the waters where Spanish and Portuguese galleons and the ships of Drake, Cabrillo, Vizcaino, and Portola have long since sailed on into eternity. In this place, ghosts of the clipper ships of gold rush days mingle with the cool gray mist of fog from the Pacific Ocean, and the sound of foghorns stirs to recollection the voices of Claudia, Cliff, Jack, and Father and Mother Barber, members of the legendary One Man's Family, which was brought to life here by Carlton E. Morse in the days when San Francisco was the major center of network radio programming for the rest of the nation. Said to be a duplicate of the original in Paris, the Palace of the Legion of Honor reflects the cultural atmosphere of the city by the Golden Gate. One of the 5 original casts of The Thinker by Rodin marks the entrance to 22 art galleries, housing collections of 18th century French art, sculpture, furniture, period rooms, and one of the finest collections of paintings in the entire West. Artists, sculptors, jazz stylists, symphonists, ballet and opera performers have inspired and been inspired by the city which claims as its own Jack London, Robert Louis Stevenson, Mark Twain, Bret Harte, and William Saroyan. Taking its name from a flagpole which marks the western terminus of the Lincoln Highway, the 18-hole Lincoln Park Municipal Golf Course is one of 4 in the city. The course is laid out over 3 cemeteries. Thus, a player might tee off over Potter's Field, make an approach shot over the old Chinese cemetery, and hole out over the old Italian cemetery. The 49-mile scenic drive takes an abrupt dogleg to the right at this point, traveling west along Geary Boulevard toward the Pacific Ocean. Along the coastline where Portola's men first sighted the beautiful San Francisco Bay in 1769, The great highway is intersected by Point Lobos Avenue, site of the Cliff House, one of the city's best-known buildings. The original Cliff House, built in 1858, was one of 3 previous buildings to be destroyed by fire. This is the 4th building to occupy the historic spot overlooking the Sky Tram and Seal Rocks. Located 400 feet offshore from the Cliff House, Seal Rocks are so named because of the fact that they are inhabited by hundreds of stellar sea lions from January through June. From the Cliff House, it's a short walk to the wild rides of Playland at the beach. Beyond the amusement section of Playland at the beach, the 49-mile scenic drive widens out into the Great Highway. This beautiful stretch of road runs for 3 miles along the ocean, its pedestrian esplanade and seawall affording an excellent view of the white sands and booming surf of the Pacific. Further along the beach, the Great Highway is intersected by Sloat Boulevard, site of Fleischacker Zoo, and the home of more than 1,000 fascinating creatures from all over the world. 650 animals and 350 birds provide a veritable living merry-go-round of appeal to the child that is in all of us. Undoubtedly, one of San Francisco's most famous show places is Golden Gate Park, among the largest, most beautiful parks in the world. Today's luxuriant foliage is a far cry from the windswept wasteland of rolling sand dunes which stretched between the ocean and the infant city of 1887. In that year, John McLaren was appointed park superintendent and continued to guide its development for 56 years until his death in 1943. Every plant, every shrub, every tree has been planted or transplanted by hand. Statistically, the park encompasses 1,013 acres of land rolled out in a city welcome map half a mile wide and 3 miles long. 16 miles of drives and roads, 7.5 miles of bridle paths, and 27 miles of trails wind among 5,000 varieties of shrubs and plants, which require over 4 million gallons of water daily. Points of interest within the park include the Japanese Tea Garden, the Young Memorial Museum, the California Academy of Sciences, and Steinhardt Aquarium. Steinhardt Aquarium, like the zoo, is a must-stop for children on the 49-mile scenic drive. Immediately adjacent to Steinhardt Aquarium is African Hall, part of the series of exhibits presented by the California Academy of Sciences. From the 9th Avenue exit of the park, adjoining the Hall of Flowers, the 49-mile scenic drive continues through the Sunset District, one of the older residential areas of the city. San Francisco's unique architecture is exemplified in the homes along 7th Avenue, where it is a standing joke amongst the citizenry that the building code calls for at least 1/2 inch of space between buildings. Backyards here resemble tennis courts in size and shape, except they are narrower. The Forest Hill Christian Church on Laguna Honda is one of approximately 500 churches in San Francisco and representative of the booming trend in new church buildings in the area. En route to Twin Peaks, the 49-mile drive passes through the Forest Hills residential area, where street names, stucco exteriors, and tile roofs evidence the early Spanish influence on the city. There are approximately 760,000 people living in the city of San Francisco, within an area 6½ miles wide and 7 miles long, surrounded on 3 sides by water. Living space is obviously at a premium, resulting in architecture that is uniquely San Franciscan, referred to in some circles as the modern generation of cliff dwellers. Where else would you find a single building with 2 street addresses? The downstairs apartments facing one street receive mail addressed to 1349 Clayton, while the top apartments of the same building face another street with another number. But the mailman also inherits a fabulous view of the city from here. He is able to look from the Golden Gate along San Francisco Bay past the cities of the East Bay to the Bay Bridge, and further along the peninsula toward the airport and Candlestick Park. The world-famous look from Twin Peaks Panoramic Drive, located geographically in the exact center of San Francisco, affords the highest, most far-reaching view of the city and area. Although the 49-mile scenic drive is at the top of the things-to-do list for tourists and visiting firemen, it is safe to assume that the average San Franciscan has never bothered to take the trip in its entirety, and thereby is missing a capsuled first-hand portrait of one of the loveliest cities in the world. The familiar date palms of Dolores Street mark the entrance to San Francisco's Mission District, the Warm Belt, en route to the old Spanish Mission Dolores. Sixth in the chain of 21 missions founded by the Franciscan Fathers, it was established in 1776 and today houses many interesting relics of Spanish California. John McLaren's heritage left not only Golden Gate Park to an admiring city, but included Mission Park as well, with its 300 acres of natural park and facilities for hiking, camping, and related woodland sports. The southernmost loop of the 49-mile scenic drive encircles McLaren Golf Course, the newest municipal course in the city, and one where par is a challenge for the most seasoned golfer. At Visitation Avenue, the scenic drive bends back toward downtown San Francisco, along the rather frantic James Lick Freeway. Scene of one of the city's hottest controversies is the Embarcadero Freeway, which slashes across the face of the historic Ferry Building, nostalgic symbol of another era which still serves as western terminus of the Southern Pacific and Western Pacific Railways. The street that was once the pride of the city, the street that is still perhaps its most important traffic artery, the street that is Market, cuts like a scar across the face of the city, reaching 3½ miles in a straight line from the Ferry Building to Twin Peaks. Just off Market Street to the right, City Hall is the central and most dominant feature of San Francisco's Civic Center. The familiar dome rises 300 feet above a structure of granite, surrounded by a monumental group of buildings which include the main library with its millions of volumes of literature, the State of California Office Building, a closer view of the ornate gold leaf frontage of City Hall, Civic Auditorium with a seating capacity of 12,000. The Opera House, where history was made with the signing of the United Nations Charter and later with the signing of the Japanese Peace Treaty. And the War Memorial Building dedicated to the veterans of World War I. From Civic Center, a shortcut along Van Ness Avenue bypasses Chinatown, Telegraph Hill, and Fisherman's Wharf, en route to the Maritime Museum located at the foot of Polk Street. The city of San Francisco has its roots in salt water. Its history and traditions are written on the sails of Spanish and Portuguese galleons, on the clipper ships of gold rush days, and currently along the 3½ miles of the Embarcadero, which parallels one of the most important waterfront areas in the world. This rich history is embodied in the Maritime Museum, in hundreds of authentic models, historical literature, and nautical photographs. The stretch run of the 49-mile scenic drive is marked by the attractive residential district along picturesque Marina Boulevard. Sailing yachts rounding the islands of the bay and luxurious motor craft pass in and out of San Francisco's beautiful yacht harbor, which is traditionally strung with hundreds of lights during the Christmas season. Beyond the yacht harbor is the Palace of Fine Arts, designed by Bernard Maybeck, who received his inspiration for the building from the famous painting Island of the Dead. This architectural masterpiece was built to house the art exhibits of the Panama Pacific International Exposition in 1950. At this writing, a $6.5 million restoration program is pending final approval and initiation. Our scenic drive ends on the approach to Golden Gate Bridge, headed north on Highway 101 toward Marin County. The towers of Golden Gate Bridge are a standing tribute to the ideals and imagination of all men, for they epitomize these qualities as they existed in one man, J. Strauss, who designed and built the Washington Bridge in addition to this masterpiece. In retrospect, it is difficult for us to imagine the foresight and daring it took to complete this gigantic work in the year 1937, until we stop to ponder at a few simple statistics. The bridge soars 220 feet above the waters of San Francisco Bay, supported by towers equivalent in height to a 65-story building, linked by 4,200 feet of cable between towers. Golden Gate Bridge, as famous and nostalgic a world landmark as the Eiffel Tower and the Statue of Liberty, is also one of the most beautiful, providing an appropriate frame for the portrait of a city, depicted in its 49-mile scenic drive. Portrait, a graphic portrayal of the people and places in the San Francisco Bay Area, is produced by KRON TV in the community interest.